Imagine this: a simple act of kindness or a moment of selfishness, both seemingly small, can set off a chain reaction that echoes through your life and even the lives of those around you. This is the unseen force of karma, a natural law that governs not only our actions but the intentions behind them. You might think that karma is just a vague spiritual concept, but in reality, it shapes every aspect of our existence. The Buddha's teachings on karma emphasize that it is not just about what we do, but the intent behind what we do. What if you could tap into this power? What if you could consciously shape your future by aligning your intentions with your higher values? As we journey through this teaching, we'll explore how karma works as an inescapable force, influencing your life in ways you may never have imagined. We'll look at examples from the lives of prominent figures. Individuals who used their intentions, whether for good or ill, to carve out their destinies. And just as importantly, we'll uncover the nature of rebirth and how, far from being a passive victim to your past actions, you can take charge of your future through the simple power of intention. Join us as we delve deeper into these profound teachings that have the power to transform your life. Karma, the power of intention. In the teachings of the Buddha, karma is not just about actions, it's about the intention behind those actions. This is a crucial distinction as it shapes how karma influences our lives. Karma in its most basic form is the law of cause and effect, but it's the intention behind our actions that gives it weight. In Buddhism, karma is seen as the energy that is produced by our intentional actions, whether those actions are physical, verbal, or mental. Let's take an example. If a person helps a stranger find their way to a bank with good intentions, the action itself is deemed positive, creating bright karma. Even if that stranger later uses the directions for a nefarious purpose, like robbing the bank, the original intention remains good. The person who helped may never know the consequences of their action, but their intention was to help, and that good intention creates bright karma. On the flip side, karma also operates in reverse. Harmful actions driven by negative intentions, such as selfishness, greed, or malice, create dark karma. Imagine a scenario where a powerful world leader, perhaps someone like Steve Jobs, had acted out of pure selfishness, disregarding the needs of his employees and those around him for personal gain. This would create dark karma, which, while it may not show immediate consequences, would certainly manifest in the long term. Jobs' groundbreaking success in the tech world could not erase any ethical missteps or unkind acts, and the natural law of karma would ensure that these negative intentions had consequences, even if not immediately visible. In every situation, it is the intention behind the action that matters the most. This is why the Buddha emphasizes the importance of mindfulness in all aspects of life, our thoughts, words, and deeds. We must be aware of the motivations behind our actions to ensure we cultivate good karma rather than bad. The nature of karma, an inescapable natural law. Karma functions similarly to the natural laws we experience daily, like gravity. Gravity does not punish an object when it falls, nor does it reward it for remaining still. Instead, it is simply a law of nature, something we observe and understand as part of the world we live in. In the same way, karma operates as an impersonal law of nature. There is no external force or karma police enforcing it. It just is. Think of the way gravity works. When a stone is thrown into a river, it sinks. But if you spill oil into the river, it floats. Neither the stone nor the oil are being punished or rewarded. They are simply behaving according to the properties they inherently possess. Similarly, karma manifests naturally based on the intention behind actions, without any need for an external entity to intervene. In life, this is equally true. There are no external forces deciding the fate of our karma. It is the natural law of cause and effect playing out. There is no higher authority that punishes or rewards our actions. Instead, our actions, whether good or bad, unfold according to their natural consequences. A person who creates negative karma may find themselves facing struggles or challenges, while someone who creates positive karma will likely experience a life filled with harmony and good fortune. but it's all part of the law of nature, unfolding as a natural result of our intentional actions. For example, consider the lives of famous world figures like Nelson Mandela. Mandela's actions were driven by a deep sense of justice and the intention to bring equality to his country, even at great personal cost. As a result, he cultivated positive karma that ultimately led to his global recognition, not just as a leader, but as a symbol of peace and reconciliation. His actions created an enduring legacy that continues to inspire people worldwide. On the other hand, we can also look at individuals whose actions, driven by negative intentions, have resulted in devastating consequences. Take, for instance, figures who have amassed wealth or power at the expense of others, individuals who may have used their influence to manipulate or harm. While their actions might have brought them short-term success, the long-term effects of their negative karma can eventually catch up with them, leading to scandal, downfall, or isolation. This is karma in action, the natural unfolding of cause and effect. Rebirth and Samsara, the cyclical nature of existence. Rebirth is another critical aspect of the Buddha's teachings on karma. According to Buddhist philosophy, rebirth is not the continuation of a permanent self or soul, but rather the transfer of accumulated karma. This cycle of rebirth is what the Buddha refers to as samsara, the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In samsara, karma determines where and how a being is reborn. When a person dies, their accumulated karma forms the basis for their next life. Bright karma that stems from selflessness, compassion, and virtuous actions, leads to a rebirth in a higher realm, while dark karma, stemming from actions motivated by greed, hatred, and delusion, results in a lower, more challenging realm. This cyclical process continues, with beings being reborn over and over again according to their past karma, in a journey that spans countless lifetimes. This concept can be challenging to grasp. However, to better understand rebirth, think of the process like a ripple in water. When a stone is dropped into a still pond, it creates ripples that spread outward. The ripples don't carry the stone with them, but they are a direct result of the stone's impact. Similarly, karma is like that stone. Once it is set in motion, it creates ripples that influence future rebirths. Take, for instance, the story of a famous public figure like Mahatma Gandhi. His lifelong commitment to nonviolence and the betterment of his people created an immense accumulation of positive karma. Even in death, his actions continue to shape the world, his legacy lives on, and his bright karma has influenced generations. Gandhi's rebirth, in a spiritual sense, would be viewed as one that results from his actions driven by positive intentions. Contrast this with individuals who live lives driven by selfishness or malice. In the Buddhist view, these individuals may experience more suffering in their next lives, as the negative karma they accumulated would result in a rebirth in a more challenging environment. While we don't know the exact specifics of what happens after death, the natural law of karma ensures that our past actions determine where we are born and what our life experiences will be like. Understanding the 31 planes of existence. According to the Buddha's teachings, the universe is not a flat, one-dimensional experience. Instead, existence is divided into 31 planes, each representing a different realm of existence. These realms are not just metaphorical, but are seen as tangible experiences shaped by the karma of individuals. Some of these planes are material, like the realms of humans and animals, while others are immaterial, like the planes of hungry ghosts or celestial beings. The Buddha observed that when we die, our karma determines the next plane we are reborn into. A person with accumulated bright karma, having lived a life of compassion and selflessness, might be reborn into a realm of bliss, while a person with dark karma, driven by hatred and greed, might be reborn in a realm of suffering. Rebirth as a process, not a permanent self. It is essential to note that in Buddhism, there is no permanent self that undergoes rebirth. The concept of no self anatta suggests that there is no unchanging, permanent soul or self that moves from one life to another. Instead, rebirth is the transfer of accumulated karma which manifests in a new being. This being is not a fixed self, but a combination of the five aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These aggregates come together based on causes and conditions, creating the appearance of a self. The Buddha's teachings on no self emphasize that what we consider self is merely a collection of constantly changing factors with no inherent permanent essence. So when we speak of rebirth, we are not talking about the continuation of a permanent soul, but the continuation of karmic energy. The process of rebirth in Buddhism, continuity, not a fixed self. The concept of rebirth in Buddhism is often misunderstood. Many people perceive it as the transfer of a permanent self from one life to another, similar to the way a soul might move through different bodies in some other religious or philosophical traditions. However, according to Buddhist teachings, rebirth is not the continuation of a fixed, permanent self, but rather the continuation of karma that manifests in a new being. This being is not a permanent I or self, but rather a transient aggregation of what the Buddha called the five aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These aggregates come together due to causes and conditions, but they are not static or eternal. To illustrate, think about a famous world figure like Oprah Winfrey. Oprah, renowned for her career in media and philanthropy, is a person who continually evolves based on her experiences, actions, and decisions. While Oprah's self might seem constant in the public eye, what we perceive as Oprah is actually a dynamic and ever-changing collection of thoughts, beliefs, actions, and physical states. These components shift and change over time, which parallels the Buddhist view of existence. Just like Oprah's self is not a fixed essence but a collection of dynamic elements, the Buddhist teaching of rebirth suggests that what continues after death is not a permanent soul but the accumulated karma, the actions, intentions, and experiences that condition the next life. This process is akin to a flame passing from one candle to another. The flame is not the same, yet it continues due to the conditions from the first candle. Much like how karma continues across lifetimes. This perspective challenges the conventional idea of a soul or self that retains continuity over multiple lifetimes. Instead, Buddhism teaches that rebirth is simply the continuation of karmic forces and the cycle of existence. As a result, when a person dies, the elements that made up their self, including their actions, thoughts, and desires, pass on, shaping the next form of existence. There is no permanent self that passes through these lifetimes. Rather, it is the accumulated karma that shapes the nature of the new being, just like how Oprah's public persona evolves based on the choices she makes and the actions she takes. Karma and free will, the interplay of intentions and conditions. While karma undeniably shapes our lives, one of the most intriguing aspects of Buddhism is the nuanced understanding of free will. The Buddha teaches that while karma influences our actions and outcomes, we still possess the ability to exercise free will, and this free will plays a critical role in our spiritual progress. It's through conscious effort and decision-making that we can begin to break free from the cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The idea of free will in Buddhism is both complex and subtle. It acknowledges that while our actions and intentions are influenced by past karma, we are not entirely bound by it. We can make choices that lead to positive outcomes, and we can actively choose to cultivate virtuous actions, thoughts, and intentions. However, even these choices are not entirely free of conditioning. Our past karma shapes the lens through which we perceive the world, influencing our desires, dislikes, and reactions. In this way, free will and karma exist in a dynamic interplay. To put this into perspective, let's look at a modern, high-profile figure like Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. Musk is a man who has built his empire through visionary ideas, bold decisions, and relentless work ethic. His rise to success wasn't merely the result of good karma or random chance. It was a result of deliberate action, calculated risks, and a strong sense of purpose. Musk's intentions and actions, whether building the first successful electric car or launching humans into space, come from his free will, the conscious effort he put into creating the future he envisioned. His choices, however, are also influenced by his past experiences, desires, and circumstances, which is where karma comes into play. Similarly, in Buddhist thought, while we have the freedom to make decisions and pursue spiritual growth, these choices are still shaped by the karma we've accumulated. For example, a person who has repeatedly acted out of anger and frustration in the past may find it harder to remain calm and compassionate in the present. However, through mindfulness, introspection, and consistent effort, they can transform their karma by cultivating patience and loving kindness. This illustrates that while karma has a powerful influence, it does not predetermine our future. Our intentions, efforts, and actions still shape the direction of our lives. In other words, karma doesn't imply that we are slaves to our past actions, but it encourages us to become aware of how our actions shape our present and future. By practicing mindfulness and understanding the interplay of free will and karma, we can make decisions that contribute to our spiritual liberation, gradually breaking free from the constraints of samsara. The law of karma in everyday life, observing and applying the law of karma, as taught by the Buddha, is not just an abstract philosophical concept, it is a practical law that governs our everyday life. We can observe the effects of karma in our own experiences, interactions, and relationships. The Buddha teaches that we should scrutinize our actions carefully to understand whether they lead to self-affliction, the affliction of others, or both. By understanding the results of our actions, we can guide our lives toward creating positive karma and minimizing negative karma. One famous example of karma at work in everyday life is the success story of Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft and one of the wealthiest men in the world. Gates' early life was filled with intentional action, much of it driven by a desire to innovate and improve technology. However, it was his shift in later years toward philanthropy, his conscious decision to give away much of his wealth through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that highlights the dynamic nature of karma. In his later years, Gates made it a priority to alleviate global poverty, improve healthcare, and expand education in underprivileged regions. His positive karma, cultivated through this intentional shift in focus, has had a significant positive impact on millions of lives worldwide. In contrast, a person who acts out of greed, dishonesty, or cruelty, as many corrupt corporate leaders and politicians have, can experience the consequences of negative karma. Take, for example, individuals who exploit vulnerable populations or destroy the environment for financial gain, even if they achieve temporary success. The negative karma they accumulate will ultimately lead to personal and professional downfall. History is full of examples where powerful individuals who engaged in selfish and destructive actions faced scandal, public outrage, and loss of power, whether through legal consequences or damage to their reputations. The Buddha's teachings on karma encourage us to reflect on our daily actions and consider their consequences. Whether it's a simple gesture, like a kind word to a stranger, or a more significant action, like the decision to act with integrity in our professional lives, each choice we make has karmic consequences. Recognizing this, we can make an effort to cultivate positive karma by acting with intention, kindness, and compassion in our everyday interactions. It's important to note that karma is not about achieving perfection. The Buddha does not teach that we must always act flawlessly, but that we should act with awareness. Even when we make mistakes, if our intention is to learn and improve, the karmic consequences will be different than if our intention is to deceive or harm. In this way, karma is not a rigid, punitive system, but a dynamic and ever-evolving process that mirrors our intentions and actions. Bringing it all together, karma as a pathway to spiritual liberation. Ultimately, the Buddha's teachings on karma and rebirth are deeply interconnected with the goal of spiritual liberation, or nirvana. By understanding and applying the law of karma in our lives, we can begin to break free from the cycle of samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. This requires a deep commitment to self-awareness, self-improvement, and mindfulness in our actions, speech, and thoughts, just as we see in the lives of individuals like Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates. Our intentional actions can shape the course of our lives and influence the world around us. When we recognize that our actions have consequences, not only in this lifetime but also in future rebirths, we can begin to make choices that align with our highest potential. The Buddha teaches us that through mindful action and cultivating good karma, we can gradually transcend the cycle of suffering and reach spiritual freedom. Thus, karma is not just an abstract teaching. It is a practical and profound law that governs how we live our lives, how we interact with others, and how we create our future. By understanding karma, exercising our free will, and acting with intention, we can create a path toward peace, liberation, and enlightenment. The Buddha's teachings offer profound insights into the nature of karma and rebirth, providing a framework that allows individuals to navigate the complexities of their actions and the consequences they bring. One of the clearest examples of the Buddha's guidance on this matter comes from a conversation with his son, Rahula. This interaction is significant not only for understanding the nature of karma, but also for recognizing the critical role of intention in shaping one's life and future. The story of Rahula, discerning good and bad actions. In one of his teachings to Rahula, the Buddha provided a simple but powerful method for determining whether an action is good or bad. The Buddha asked Rahula to reflect on whether his actions were leading to self-affliction, the affliction of others, or both. This straightforward inquiry encourages personal introspection, helping individuals determine whether their actions are aligned with their highest principles or whether they may be causing harm. This approach can be applied to nearly every decision we make in life. When we act with compassion, kindness, and a desire to contribute positively to the world, we create bright karma. On the other hand, actions rooted in anger, greed, or selfishness contribute to dark karma, which brings suffering not only to others but also to ourselves. Consider someone like Barack Obama. Throughout his presidency and post-presidency, Obama demonstrated how intentional actions, driven by a sense of duty to others, can generate positive karma. His presidency was marked by efforts to improve healthcare, fight climate change, and reduce inequality. The consequences of these actions continue to reverberate globally, and his positive karma manifests in his legacy, which continues to influence individuals and communities. On the contrary, we can look at examples of negative karma in figures whose actions were motivated by selfishness or harm. For instance, high-profile business leaders or politicians who have been caught in scandal, corruption, or abuse of power demonstrate how actions based on greed or deception ultimately lead to negative consequences, even if their wealth or influence temporarily shields them from direct repercussions. In the long run, their actions often result in public disgrace, loss of power, and diminished credibility. The Buddha's teachings to Rahula are a call to develop self-awareness and mindfulness about our actions, ensuring that we are not unconsciously perpetuating harm. By considering the impact of our actions on ourselves and others, we can begin to align our actions with wholesome intentions, cultivating positive karma for both ourselves and the world around us. The simile of the stone and the water, karma's natural consequences. In another famous simile, the Buddha compared karma to a stone thrown into a river. The stone sinks to the bottom while the oil floats to the surface. This analogy beautifully illustrates how karma, like the physical properties of these substances, manifests naturally based on the nature of the action. A positive action, rooted in kindness and selflessness, may lead to a higher plane of existence in the future. Just as oil naturally floats to the top of the water, a harmful action, motivated by greed or malice, sinks the individual deeper into the cycle of suffering, akin to the stone sinking to the river's bed. This simile serves as a reminder that karma is not a matter of reward or punishment, but rather a natural consequence of our actions. The Buddha's teachings on karma suggest that we don't need an external entity to impose consequences on us, our actions. when viewed through the lens of karma, will naturally lead to the appropriate results. Rebirth in Buddhism, the continuity of karma. The concept of rebirth in Buddhism is often misunderstood, particularly because it does not align with the traditional Western notion of the soul. In Buddhism, rebirth does not involve the transfer of a fixed, permanent soul from one life to another. Instead, it refers to the continuation of karma, specifically the karmic energies and actions accumulated over previous lifetimes that manifest in a new being. This understanding of rebirth emphasizes the impermanence of the self. According to the Buddha, what we perceive as a self is actually a transient collection of the five aggregates: form, physical matter, sensation, feelings, perception, recognition of things, mental formations, thoughts and intentions, and consciousness, awareness. These aggregates are not static. They are constantly changing and interacting with one another based on causes and conditions. This dynamic process forms the basis of our existence, but it does not support the idea of a permanent, unchanging self that moves from one life to the next. Let's take a modern-day example. Consider a well-known and often controversial figure like Donald Trump. His public persona and self have shifted and evolved over the years, influenced by the actions he's taken and the decisions he's made. This is the nature of existence in Buddhism. We are not fixed beings, but ever-changing aggregates that are influenced by past actions and conditions. When Trump made decisions, whether in business or politics, those actions generated karma. The fruits of that karma manifest not in the form of a self moving through time, but in the ongoing effects of his decisions on his life and others' lives. His actions continue to shape the world and influence future events. Much as the Buddha taught, our karma is what endures across lifetimes, not a permanent self. Similarly, in the Buddhist view of rebirth, when a person dies, their accumulated karma does not disappear. Instead, it shapes the next life, guiding the new being towards specific conditions or realms, depending on the nature of the karma accumulated. Just like the oil floating on the surface of the water, positive karma leads to better circumstances, while dark karma results in suffering. The role of free will in karma, shaping our destiny. One of the central tenets of Buddhist philosophy is the recognition of free will and its relationship to karma. While karma undeniably shapes our lives, the Buddha emphasized that we still have the ability to shape our future through conscious effort and intention. This perspective acknowledges that our lives are influenced by past actions, but it also recognizes the profound potential for transformation through mindful choices. Free will in Buddhism does not mean a complete absence of influence from past actions. Instead, it suggests that we are not merely passive recipients of karmic results, but that we have the capacity to change the course of our lives through our actions, speech, and thoughts. Take the example of someone like Malala Yousafzai, the Pakistani activist who became a global symbol for girls' education after surviving an assassination attempt by the Taliban. Malala's journey was influenced by the karma of her past actions, particularly her activism for education. However, it was her conscious decision to continue her work, even in the face of danger, that shaped her future. In this way, her free will, the intention behind her actions, allowed her to transform her karma, inspiring millions of people around the world. Despite the challenges and obstacles she faced, Malala exercised her free will to create positive karma, which continues to have a profound effect on global education. In Buddhist teachings, the exercise of free will is vital for spiritual growth. We can, through intentional action, move closer to the goal of enlightenment. This means making the conscious decision to practice right intention, right speech, and right action. By following the Buddha's path, we can begin to purify our minds and transform our karma. The ultimate goal, liberation from samsara. The ultimate aim of the Buddhist path is to break free from samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Samsara is driven by karma, and it is characterized by the constant repetition of suffering and delusion. To achieve liberation or nirvana, one must transcend the cycle of samsara by extinguishing the fundamental causes of suffering, craving, aversion, and ignorance. In the Buddhist worldview, liberation is not the escape of a permanent self from the cycle. but rather the realization of the emptiness of the self and the cessation of the desire to cling to any fixed identity. It is the complete cessation of all delusions, including the illusion of a separate self that is bound to the endless cycle of rebirth. A figure like Gandhi can serve as a powerful example here. Gandhi's commitment to nonviolence, truth, and self-discipline allowed him to transcend many of the limitations and sufferings that others face through his practices and actions. Gandhi's karma became a force for liberation, not just for himself, but for millions of others. His life's work was grounded in the principles of non-harm and selfless service, actions that, in Buddhist terms, contribute to breaking the cycle of samsara. In Buddhist thought, the way to break free from samsara is through mindful living, which includes understanding karma, cultivating good intentions, and reducing attachment to the self. By doing so, one can gradually transcend the effects of karma and move toward the ultimate goal of liberation, which is the realization of nirvana. The ultimate goal of Buddhism is liberation from samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. This cycle is driven by karma, and the path to liberation lies in transcending the attachments that keep us bound to samsara, craving, aversion, and ignorance. By understanding karma, cultivating positive intentions, and striving for mindfulness, we can gradually break free from samsara. The Buddha's teachings provide a clear path to nirvana, the ultimate realization of freedom and enlightenment. Through conscious effort, we can transcend the cycle of suffering and move towards a state of peace, liberation, and profound understanding. Just as we see in the lives of individuals like Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates, our intentional actions can shape our destinies and influence the world around us. The Buddha teaches that by acting with intention and mindfulness, we can gradually purify our karma and move closer to spiritual freedom. Breaking free from the constraints of samsara, karma is not just a theory, it is a practical and profound law that governs every aspect of our lives. By recognizing the power of intention, embracing free will, and acting with compassion and mindfulness, we can begin to create positive karma and walk the path toward liberation from suffering.